Welcome back, everyone. So you've brought us a really interesting bunch of documents about AI security, especially focusing on what's happening over in Japan.
Right.
Yeah, and it looks like you're trying to kind of get a handle on like the whole current landscape with AI security there.
Yeah.
So guidelines, risks, what users need to be thinking about,
Exactly.
all that stuff.
Yeah.
So you've got government guidelines from Me AI, some security trend analysis, and even a Beam Consulting's internal AI guidelines.
Yes. Very interesting stuff.
Yeah. So we're going to try to like weave all these different sources together to give you a really solid understanding of, you know, what AI security looks like in Japan and what it means for anyone using AI, whether you're using it for work or just in your everyday life.
Absolutely. And I think one thing that's fascinating here is that Japan seems to be taking a really proactive approach to AI, but also very aware of the potential risks, especially around security.
That makes sense. I mean, it's like a
It's powerful technology. There's a lot of opportunity there, but also a lot of potential for things to go wrong.
And so what's interesting is that, you know, obviously laws are still being developed around this. But the government has released these really comprehensive guidelines for people who are developing AI, people who are providing AI services, and importantly, even for users of AI.
So they're not just saying, hey, companies, you got to figure this out. They're actually giving guidance.
Exactly. They're giving guidance to all the stakeholders.
Everyone who's involved in this whole AI world.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's really helpful because it kind of clarifies who's responsible for what.
Exactly.
Yeah, you know, you as the user have your own set of responsibilities when it comes to AI security.
Absolutely.
So the guidelines, actually, they lay out these three key roles.
Yeah.
So the AI developer, the AI provider, and then the AI user.
Okay, so can we just break those down for a second so I'm clear on like who's who here?
Yeah, absolutely.
So the AI developer, I'm guessing that's the one who's actually like creating
That's right.
the AI itself.
The brains behind the operation.
Okay.
Ones who are designing and building these AI models.
So like the university researchers pushing the boundaries of AI algorithms, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the AI provider, I guess that's the one who takes those models.
Yes. So
they makes them into something usable.
Exactly. So they provide the infrastructure and the tools for others to build and deploy their AI.
So that's like a cloud platform like Microsoft Azure or Amazon Web Services?
A great example. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And then, of course, you have the AI user, which is just someone like you or me interacting with AI, whether it's a simple chatbot or some fancy AI tool at work.
Okay, so just to make sure I've got this straight. Let's say we've got a university researcher develops a new algorithm for image recognition. So that's our AI developer. And then a company uses that algorithm to build an online platform where people can upload their photos to be automatically tagged and organized. That's our AI provider.
Exactly.
And then I come along and I use that platform to like manage my giant photo collection. I'm the AI user.
Perfect example.
Okay, so each of those players has their own responsibilities.
They each have a different set of responsibilities when it comes to security.
Okay, and that brings us to the good stuff, the risks.
Yeah, the juicy stuff.
Yeah, so these documents lay out some pretty specific dangers that anyone using AI in Japan needs to be aware of.
And these aren't just your typical cybersecurity threats. You know, these are risks that are really unique to AI because of how AI systems learn and operate.
Okay, so they break down the risks into two main categories. We've got input risks and we've got output risks.
That's right.
Okay, so let's start with input risks. One of the big ones they talk about is leaking confidential information. Seems obvious, but you know, people need to be really careful about what they're putting into these AI systems.
Yeah, and it's a bigger problem than you might think.
Really?
Because, you know, imagine you're using an AI chatbot. And you start typing in sensitive company data or your personal financial information. You know, where is that data going? How is it being protected?
It's a good point.
Is it being used to train the AI and potentially exposing it to others?
That's a bit unsettling.
It is, yeah.
And then there's this thing called a prompt injection attack.
Yes. This is a very interesting one.
The security trend analysis was highlighting this.
Right. So this is where a hacker essentially uses clever language to trick the AI into spilling secrets or doing things it shouldn't be doing.
Oh, wow.
So it's like they're giving the hacker the AI's control panel.
Like they're getting behind the scenes?
Exactly. And developers and providers are working really hard to defend against this.
Yeah.
But users need to be aware of it too.
Okay.
Be careful about using AI tools from unknown sources.
Right.
Or clicking on suspicious links that offer AI-powered features.
So don't just trust any AI that comes your way.
Exactly. Be discerning.
Okay, so that's input risks, where you accidentally give the AI something you shouldn't.
Yes.
But then there's also output risks where the AI gives you something that isn't quite right.
That's right.
So what are we talking about there?
So one that's causing a lot of discussion right now is copyright.
Mm-hmm.
Particularly with AI that can create images and text and even music.
Oh, right.
Who owns that content?
Yeah, it's a big question.
Is it the user who gave the AI the instructions?
Right.
Is it the developer who made the AI, or does the AI have some kind of ownership itself?
Yeah, these are big questions.
Huge questions.
They're still being figured out.
Yeah.
And then there's the deep fakes. We hear so much about, AI creating fake videos or audio that you can't even tell from the real thing.
And as AI models get better and better,
yeah,
it's getting tougher and tougher to tell what's real and what's fake.
Yeah, that's a scary thought when you think about how it could be used for misinformation or to damage someone's reputation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, scary stuff.
Yeah.
And speaking of things that aren't real.
Yes.
What about these AI hallucinations?
Oh, yes, this is
that the NEI guidelines mention.
Yeah, so AI hallucinations are when the AI confidently presents made up or nonsensical information.
Like it's lying.
Like it's making stuff up, but doesn't realize it's doing that.
Oh, wow.
So, for example, one of the documents described an AI that was asked to write a biography of a historical figure, and it confidently included all sorts of fabricated details, even attributing quotes to them that they never said.
Wow. So it's like it has a really good poker face.
It does. It really does.
So you can't just blindly trust what an AI produces, especially if you're using it for something important.
Especially for important decisions, yeah.
Okay, so we've got input risks where you accidentally give the AI something it shouldn't have.
Right.
And we've got output risks where the AI gives you something that's not quite right.
That's right.
So what can people actually do to protect themselves from all of this?
So the good news is these documents don't just point out the problems.
Okay.
They offer some pretty practical advice too.
Okay, like what? Give me the goods.
So one of the most basic but important things is to avoid putting any personal or confidential information into AI systems that aren't specifically designed to handle that type of data.
So, like, if you're using a chatbot casually, you might not think twice about typing in something sensitive.
Exactly.
But you got to be more careful.
Be mindful of the context and who you're talking to.
So common sense plays a big role here.
Absolutely. Common sense is key.
What else?
Always double check what an AI produces.
Okay.
Especially for anything important. Don't just take it at face value.
Right.
Verify the information. Look for other sources that back it up.
So treat AI like that friend who always has a crazy story.
Exactly.
To take it with a grain of salt.
A healthy dose of skepticism.
Okay, what else?
And never forget to read the fine print.
The terms of service.
I know.
But why are they so important when it comes to AI?
Because they tell you what data is being collected, how it's being used, and what your rights are as a user.
So it might be boring to read through all that legalese.
It might be, but it's crucial.
Yeah.
You need to know what you're agreeing to.
Okay, so be careful about what you put into the AI.
Yeah.
Be skeptical of what you get back.
Right.
And understand the terms of service.
Read the fine print.
Okay. Anything else?
One last thing. If you come across any security issues or have concerns about how an AI is being used, report it.
So if I see something, say something.
Exactly. The guidelines highlight that users have a responsibility to report any issues.
Okay. Great advice. Anything else we should touch on before we move on?
Actually, yes. There's one more thing.
Yeah.
Beam Consulting. They've taken things a step further.
Okay.
And they've created their own internal guidelines.
Oh, wow.
That actually build on what the government recommends.
Okay.
And they really recognize how important it is to have internal policies that specifically address AI risks.
Okay.
And they even suggest doing a security check.
A security check?
Yeah.
Like I'm a bouncer at a club.
Not quite, but, think of it as like doing a little research before you use a new AI service.
Okay.
Look into the company providing the AI, check out some reviews.
Okay.
Try to understand their security practices before you trust them.
So instead of just jumping into the latest AI trend, take a moment to see if it's legit.
Exactly. Do your homework.
Okay, so be a savvy AI user.
Be a savvy user.
All right, well, that sounds like a great place to wrap up part 1.
Yeah?
We've talked about like the who's who in this whole AI world. We talked about the types of risks to watch out for. And some of the steps you can take to stay safe.
Exactly.
But there's more to explore.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So stick around.
Stay tuned.
We'll be back with part 2.
Absolutely. So, it's interesting to see how these concerns about AI security are kind of intertwined with broader trends in cybersecurity.
Okay, what do you mean?
Well, one of the documents, the one on AI security trends, talks about the rising importance of something called cybersecurity outcome-driven metrics.
Ooh, that sounds complicated.
It sounds fancy, but it's actually a pretty straightforward idea.
Okay, so break it down for me.
So instead of companies just focusing on like how much money they're spending on security, they're being asked to prove that those investments are actually working.
Okay.
So it's less about like showing off all your fancy security tools and more about showing actual results.
So it's not just about like checking boxes, it's about actually demonstrating that you're taking the right steps.
Yeah, and this shift is being driven by stakeholders.
Okay.
Investors, board members, people who really want to see those positive outcomes.
Right, because no one wants to just throw money at a problem without knowing it's actually being solved.
Exactly.
Okay, so how does this relate to AI specifically?
Well, it's changing the whole landscape of AI security.
Okay.
It's no longer enough to just comply with regulations. Companies need to be proactive and demonstrate that they're effectively managing AI risks.
So how do they actually do that?
It requires a much more comprehensive approach.
Okay.
You need to think about strong technical safeguards, employee training, clear internal policies about how AI can be used.
Actually, that's a good point. Those A-Beam guidelines that we talked about earlier are a good example of that.
A perfect example.
And weren't just focused on preventing data leaks.
Right.
They had a lot to say about responsible AI use in general.
Yeah, it was really interesting to see how they took those government guidelines and kind of added their own specific rules and procedures to address the unique risks they face.
Yeah, and one thing that really stood out to me was their strict rule about putting personal or confidential information into AI systems.
They've clearly identified that potential for data leaks and privacy violations.
Right.
And they're not taking any chances.
And they're very specific about what's off limits.
Yes.
Like anything a client has marked as confidential.
Right.
Or any sensitive internal company information.
Yeah. It shows a real commitment to protecting data.
Yeah, for sure.
And they also have this really interesting rule about checking any AI-generated code.
Oh, yeah. I remember reading about that.
Yeah.
So why is that so important?
Well, because if the AI learns from code that already has security flaws, it might accidentally introduce those flaws into the new code it creates.
So it's like the AI is inheriting bad habits from the code it was trained on.
That's a great way to put it, yeah.
Wow. So it's like we need to think about these more subtle ways that these systems can introduce vulnerabilities.
It's a whole new level of thinking about security.
Right. It's not just about hackers and passwords anymore.
Exactly.
We're dealing with a system that can learn and make decisions.
Yes.
And that opens up a whole new set of possibilities.
And A-Beam seems to be getting ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
By recognizing those possibilities and building safeguards into their processes.
So what else stood out to you about the A-Beam guidelines?
Well, their approach to reporting was really interesting.
Okay.
They require employees to report any use of AI in client projects.
Oh, wow.
Especially if any AI-generated content is included in deliverables.
That's a pretty radical transparency policy.
It is, but I think it's a really smart move.
Okay.
Because by creating that culture of transparency around AI, they're building trust with their clients.
It also helps ensure that everyone's aware of, the potential benefits and risks.
Absolutely. It opens up the conversation.
Yeah, and A-Beam goes even further.
They do?
They have a specific section on exceptions to their AI rules.
Yes.
Where they address the use of what they call company-provided AI.
Right. So this refers to any AI system that has passed their internal security checks.
Okay.
And is considered safe to use within the company.
So it's like their own internal AI tools.
That's right.
Okay, and they have their own vetting process.
They do. They have a specific security check review process.
Oh, wow.
To make sure that these systems meet their standards.
So it's like they have their own internal AI certification program.
It is, yeah.
That's really fascinating.
Yep.
It shows how seriously they're taking this.
And it makes sense, as AI becomes a bigger part of how businesses operate, they're going to need to develop their own ways of evaluating and managing these risks.
It sounds like we've only just scratched the surface of this topic.
We have, and there's so much more to explore.
Okay.
Especially the connection between AI security and these broader ethical considerations.
Yeah.
We even talked about, things like fairness, transparency, accountability.
Yeah. Well, I'm definitely ready to dive deeper into that.
Me too.
Let's pick up this conversation in part 3.
It's okay.
And really get into the ethical side of things.
Absolutely.
All right. So we've talked about the who's who of AI, the different risks involved, and even how companies like ABeam are creating these internal guidelines to kind of address these challenges.
Yeah.
Now let's tackle the big question that's been looming.
Okay.
The ethics of AI.
Yeah, it's a crucial conversation to have.
Right.
As AI becomes more and more a part of our lives, we need to make sure it's being developed and used in a way that aligns with our values.
So what are we really talking about when we say ethical AI?
Yeah, good call.
What are the key principles here?
Well, there are a number of core principles.
Okay.
But one of the most important is accountability.
Okay.
So when an AI system makes a mistake or causes harm, who's responsible?
Right.
Is it the developer who built it, the company using it, or even the user interacting with it?
It sounds like a tricky question.
It is, yeah. And do the guidelines offer any answers?
Yeah. What do they say?
Well, the Japanese guidelines really emphasize the importance of clear lines of responsibility throughout the entire life cycle of an AI system.
So from the initial design
to the
development to its actual use.
To the use.
Everyone needs to understand who's responsible for what.
Exactly. And what happens if something goes wrong.
So it's not just about pointing fingers.
It's not about blame.
Yeah, it's about making sure everyone is aware of their role.
Yeah.
In making sure this AI is used responsibly.
Absolutely. And that brings us back to those who's who roles we talked about earlier.
The developer, the provider, and the user.
Developers have a responsibility to build AI systems that are safe, fair, and transparent.
Okay.
Providers need to make sure the AI they offer is being used appropriately. And users have a responsibility to use AI in a way that doesn't harm others.
It's a shared responsibility.
It is.
Yeah.
It really requires everyone to be aware of the potential risks and take steps to mitigate them.
And that's where education and awareness come in.
Absolutely. We've talked about it before.
Yeah.
But it's worth repeating. A strong AI literacy is becoming essential.
So it's not just about learning how to code or build AI systems. It's about understanding the basics of how AI works, recognizing its limitations, being aware of the ethical considerations.
It's about being able to ask critical questions.
Yeah.
And evaluate what AI tells you with a healthy dose of skepticism.
Don't just believe everything the AI tells you.
Exactly.
It reminds me of those security check reviews that ABeam recommends.
Yeah, a great example.
Before you even use a new AI service?
Yeah, it's like doing your homework on the AI system before you use it.
Right, so don't just jump into the latest AI trend.
Don't jump in blindly.
Without doing a little research.
Exactly. Informed decision-making is key.
Yeah. We got to find that balance,
Absolutely.
between embracing the potential of AI, but also being aware of the risks.
It's a balancing act.
Well, I think this deep dive has been incredibly insightful.
I agree.
We've covered a lot of ground.
Yeah.
From the very specific guidelines here in Japan to these much broader ethical considerations that are shaping the whole AI landscape globally.
Yeah, it's a dynamic field. It's constantly evolving.
Yeah, and it's going to keep challenging us in ways we haven't even imagined.
Absolutely.
So that leads us to our final thought for everyone listening.
Good.
Given how quickly AI is developing, how do you think these guidelines and security measures will need to change in the future?
Yeah.
What new challenges do you see arising? And what solutions can we come up with?
Yeah. What do you think?
Let us know your thoughts. Keep learning. Stay curious.
Keep exploring.
And let us know if there are any other topics you want to deep dive into.
We'd love to hear from you.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.